Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Irish Goodbye Business Podcast. As you know, here on the podcast, we speak to people who are in their careers, not necessarily C-suite, not necessarily keynote speakers, but people who are crushing their career, who are incredibly able at where they are, and just want to share some of their wisdom with me and with you too. So today, I'm very lucky to be joined with somebody. It's the first colleague I ever met when I moved to America. One of the best reps I've ever seen in my life. Just an all-around great guy, Todd Klimkowski. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate you having me here and inviting me to the podcast.
Excellent. So, look, for the people who don't know you, obviously I do. We work together at Oracle, Ring Central, and now Salesforce. So, why don't you give us a brief overview of your career to date?
Yeah. So, been in sales for probably getting close to like 20 years now. Software sales, work for some of the largest companies, work with you at, some, I would call it, kind of middle of the road type companies from a revenue perspective. Happy to be here. Currently at Salesforce now. I'm out of New York City. So look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Look, again, thanks for joining. And I know that you've had a varied career, but it's always been in software. But going back to kind of pre your career and setting up the mindset that you've had that's guided you through your career. I know you played basketball in college. So, you can see behind me, obviously, I played rugby for quite a bit.
Yeah.
I love what sport taught me in terms of, one, how to take pressure, how to take responsibility, but also how to be part of a team. What did playing basketball do for you?
Yeah. So, bringing it back to high school, right? I lived in Connecticut and went to high school in Queens, right? We rented a place during the week and came back on the weekends, and that kind of started it. I went to a school called Archbishop Malloy, played in a really good league, really good basketball league at that time. And, my summer league team was, people like Lamar Odom and Elton Brand and other, NBA players. So obviously being, 6 feet in comparison to 6'9", right? There's a little bit of a drastic difference. So, I had to make up in areas that I feel like I use in today's world, right? Which is hard work, to your point, teamwork, first one in, last one out mentality. And, I've kind of always taken that approach and was lucky enough to go to college on a scholarship in New York and at a school called Dominican, where a lot of my buddies that I still hang out with that very well, right? We played there and, played and drank and hung out and are still best buds today. But I think circling back to like the point that you're trying to make, right? Like having that foundation of being super competitive, right? I think at one point my prep school team was number 1 in the country. My AAU team was number 1 in the country. And not that I was the particular best player on the team in any sense, but, my whole feeling was I wanted to be on the best team and contribute the way I could, right? And I think that, you show up on time, if you're on time, you're late kind of thing, mm-hmm. Right? So my wife loves that, right? I'm always like 15, 20 minutes late. And she's like, why the hell are we sitting here alone? So it's just like in my nature. And then I think a big thing that we always talk about, right? It's kind of the separation of state is the preparation, right? Being prepared and earning the right to, at that point, get your minutes, earning the right to get that meeting, earning the right to do some of those things, right? So not just coming in on a whim and just winging it, right? So being prepared, whether that's in the off season and coming in and doing things. So I think, being in competitive basketball has really shaped the way that I focus and the way that I kind of approach my business as well. And I think we've had multiple conversations about this, but it's played a big part in my career.
Yeah, agreed. Trusting people around you to do their role and then doing yours to the best of your ability so you don't let them down. I think that's kind of key to what sport brought me. And it also taught me Some people need an arm around the shoulder and some need a kick up the ass, and it's knowing which personality responds to which.
100%. And that, that's kind of what me and you do today, right? As kind of the core AEs, it's, you're the quarterback, right? And each person's a little bit different, right? Either from a customer perspective, internal perspective on how you kind of communicate to them, how you push them, how you pull back. And it's the same thing with basketball, right? Like certain people could shoot better, certain people need the ball at the rim, right? So there are all these different things that, that's where the preparation comes in. It's kind of know who your customer is, know their personality, know what's important to them. And if you don't know, try to figure it out, right? And find it out and then leverage it, right? Rather than just coming in with your own agenda.
100%. And I think sports great too, because you don't score every shot, and it kind of lets you reset and reevaluate. And with that, is there any mistakes that you've made along the way that you've really learned from, and you nearly had to make them to learn from them, rather than, I'm not talking sport now, I'm talking career, but just like they really hurt at the time, but in hindsight, you're glad you made them?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is the beauty of working with such great companies, right? You're surrounded by just awesome people, right? That have mentored me, that have helped me, right? So, God, I've made tons and tons of mistakes, right, throughout my career. And still, still make mistakes, but it's the learning. And I think, what we always speak about, it's like, how do you never make that same mistake again, right? You can make a mistake once, but like, don't make that same mistake again. I think the biggest learning, or I call them more learnings than mistakes, right? But I think the biggest one was just the preparation and the way to effectively communicate to C-level executives, right? In my younger part of my career, I thought more in paragraph or PowerPoint rather than bullet point, right? Like, so my conversations were longer, my points were longer, my emails were longer, right? My voice messages were longer. And I think one of the key learnings that I've gotten is really focus on value and focus on bullet point communication with executives, because that's the way that I found that people, at that level, they kind of accept that information, right? So I think that's one of the biggest learnings that I've had. The other thing, I think, just in general, it's, how do you take 2 years of information, and when you're meeting with these people, and put it into 2 minutes, right? Because when you sit down with these executives, you literally have 2 to 3 minutes, right? So how do you take all of these information and then sum it down to something that they actually care about? And I think that's where the preparation comes. So, my preparation probably in my earlier days wasn't where it needed to be. My communication probably where it wasn't needed to be. And those are two things that I'm like constantly working on still. I still am a little lengthy with some of my conversations, but I would say those are two of the biggest learnings or mistakes that I made in my career.
I love that. There's a friend of mine who's a CMO, and he told me, if your email doesn't fit on the screen of an iPhone without scrolling, it's too long.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and, and people, what's the definition of insanity? They keep doing the same thing over and over again. They keep blasting these executives like these long. And the other thing that I think that's crazy, for me, I'm more of a quality than a quantity guy. Understand you got both kind of rules, but for me, it's like I spend all my time to get the quality down, and like I'm not emailing people on like 1:00 on a Monday, right? Like my emails, especially if they're a quote unquote cold call, like are on Saturday morning, Sunday nights, 6 a.m. And a lot of people do certain things like, and right, wrong, or different. Maybe I'm a little bit old school, but like, they set their email for like 6 o'clock. I don't know. I think there's, more of getting up and writing that email at 5:30 or 5:37 and sending that as a real email. For me personally, that works better for me, but I understand, leveraging technology to do it in other ways. But, I've probably met with 20 CEOs in the Fortune 500 at least, and all of my communication goes to them at those off hours, right? Yeah. It's just a separation of state. And, I spend weeks I won't say months, but weeks, just preparing like what that communication is for them. That's going to, last and make an impression on them, to separate myself from everyone else, sending notes to them.
There's two things you said there that I love. One is that you don't set it to go out at 6 a.m. while you're still lying in the nest, fucking all cozy and warm.
Yeah.
You get up and you do it. And I agree with you. I've had not necessarily C-suite, but C-1. I've had a lot of people call me or text me at 7 a.m. going, saw your email, getting into the car, driving to the office, call me.
Yeah.
You get immediate access to them 30 minutes after you sent the email because they're driving to work, and you got them uninterrupted sitting on a highway.
Yeah. And those are the learnings, right, that you get. It's, and then once you start communicating with that executive, like in my last deal, one of the guys would drive from Westchester to Jersey City. I knew he was doing that ride from 5 to 6. So if I ever really needed something, I'm not calling him at 11 unless I have to have it. I'm calling him between that time frame where I know he's going to be in the car and I have a higher likelihood of getting with him, right? And I think like in this KPI world, right, in this world of automation, it takes out a lot of the personalization, right? And at the end of the day, people are people, right? And it's how you connect them and understand what's important to them and how do you make their life easier. And that's a big thing that I focus on, right? Is all of that. People are people. I know we've had millions of conversations with this. It's just what's the right messaging at the right time at the right place, right? And I think that's a separation.
Yeah, there's a guy I used to meet with at E-Trade, and they were in Jersey City as well. And he's come in from PA, and he get the train in, and he get there at 7:30, and he always has breakfast in the same diner every morning. So we couldn't get a meeting. I end up just saying, "Can I buy you breakfast?" And we end up. That's where we had our meetings. Moving on after that, so we'd meet in the diner across the road from his office, half an hour before he went to work.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's about, right? And then it's, the other thing is you're also respectful of their time, right? They only have 20 minutes. You don't take 40, right? Unless they are like, hey, I need to talk about this or want, right? So that's the other thing. I think like once you get these meetings, you have to be super respectful of people's time. And that's another learning, right? Like, not extending the meetings, right? And now you have the admins that come in and break up the meeting. They're like, hey, Jim, like you got to go over here, get the hell out. But just being respectful of their time, because once you are that, you derive value, right? That's how you start getting the next meetings.
100%. So there's something you kind of pulled on there that you've met like over 20 Fortune 500 CEOs. I know how you do that because you and I have spoken about it at length, because it's one of the things I think you do better than most anybody in the world. You leverage your network. So just like, how important is a network? And like to me, I think a network is as important as your skill and your knowledge.
Yeah.
You're only as good as your network. But tell me what network means to you and why.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's where I've kind of built my career. And I think I've done it internally and I've done it externally. And it's probably my most prized possession, right? I mean, you know how we introduce each other to, hey, I'm trying to get over here. Do you know anyone? Right? That stuff happens 30 times a day for me, right? Where people are texting me, people are, sending me LinkedIn. For me, I think that like for myself and yourself, I think that people have a level of respect because of the work and the preparation I do to earn the right that when they do put me in front of these people, it's going to be positive, right? And they know I've done the homework and they know I'm going to drive value. And that's what it is. So I think like even before I go to my network, I am basically doing all my homework to give it to my person that knows another person, right? And I'm saying, hey, here's my message. What do you think? Right? How's this gonna resonate with this person? And that's where the coaching kind of comes in and shrinking everything down. But I think it's the work ethic. I think it's the preparation. And I think it's the trust that my network has that when they do open up these relationships, right, I'm always going to be on time. I'm never not going to show. I'm never not going to not perform, right? Like all of these meetings are my Super Bowl, right? So I am totally prepared for that meeting. And that's what's helped kind of extend. And then once you start meeting a bunch of, C-suite, whatever the title is, right? Because different organizations have different titles. Once you start meeting those type of people, you get into kind of your talk track on what's been successful, like what to say, what not to say, right? I've definitely stuck my foot in my mouth plenty of times, right? Where it's like, oh shit, I definitely shouldn't have said that. But that's the learning, right? And that's the everlasting learning that we go through.
Yeah. Your network as well is akin to your LinkedIn, and I'm going to give you some flowers that I didn't discuss with you before this. This podcast is largely due to something that you and I said, so people won't know that you and I were individual contributors together at Oracle. Then we worked together at Ring Central, and then you were my manager at Ring Central.
Yeah.
And you used to put up these tips and tricks on LinkedIn, and I remember saying to you, why are you giving away the secret sauce? Like, why are you giving away the gravy? And your answer was, because they won't fucking do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, so tell me about like how you use LinkedIn. I'm going to give myself, the only person I know who uses LinkedIn better than you is me. Right.
Yeah.
I'm the king of LinkedIn, but like you put out meaningful and engaging topics on LinkedIn that always seem to get a huge response. So how important is that part of your networking?
Well, I do it for twofold, right? I do it, one, because I try to give back, right, from a mentoring. So I mentor just a lot of different people, and I try to give back, and I want people to have the right habits, right, when they are communicating to executives, when they are communicating to customers, because I want their brand to be respected. I want the sales brand to be respected, right? And in order to do that, it's just a ton of work that you have to do, right? So that's one of the key things I do. So I'll put out content for sellers, right, and lessons learned and things that I've done. And to your point, like a lot of people just aren't going to do it, right? Like they're not going to do it. Like Saturday mornings, right, when no one else is working, I'm working, right? 4 in the morning, if I can't sleep, I'm working, right? And people are like, oh, you're going to burn out. But like after a long time, it just becomes a natural thing. The other thing that I try to do is put out content for my customers as well, because, we're fortunate to work for a great company in Salesforce, and we're surrounded by the best companies in the world, right? And what they're doing. And especially, the customer that you work with is by far one of the best, right? So, letting my customers kind of understand what's going on in the industry and letting them like get ahead of the curve, be proactive rather than reactive, right? Because the time it becomes too late, right? Because we all understand how software, it just doesn't like, you don't just like flip the switch and it works, right? You got to be like months and months ahead. So the time that everyone knows about it, now you're already implementing it, right? So, those are two of the things. And then, I think we're in agreement on this, like the amount that we can learn from LinkedIn and other podcasts and whatever, like that's my preparation, right? What people care about, the separation of state also, I think for us is like, I like really care, like I spend Saturdays with my customer. I spend Sundays with my customer. I do dinners, I do breakfast, I do sporting events. I like 24/7, 365, right? And I'm lucky that my wife kind of understands the way that I operate and knows like I am on. And when I'm on, like if a customer calls me and says, hey, Todd, I need you to be here, like, boom, I'm there, right? And that's just a mindset. And that goes with the LinkedIn, and that goes with a lot of what I said about the preparation, because then it becomes genuine, right? And it's not about me as the salesperson. It's about helping them, which ultimately is going to help me as well.
Yeah, you're so right. There's two things you hit on there. One, massive shout out to the wives and partners of people who do the jobs like we do, because Nadia, my wife, she knows if I get a text and we're planning a weekend away and all of a sudden I have to attend a golf tournament in North Carolina because one of my clients is throwing it, I don't get shit for it going.
Yeah.
I get told, this is what you do, go do it.
Yeah.
So, huge respect to the partners, is you and I have been sitting with clients at 3:00 in the morning in a bar we used to own, drinking heavily, And
Yeah.
right, and we don't get it in the neck when we come. Well, at least we get a dialed down version of it when we come home. But there's another thing you mentioned there, which I say what we do as a job is listening with integrity, because you can't fake the genuine interest that you have. That's what you said there. You care. People who don't care can't do this job. And I said this before, it's like the world doesn't need any more bad AEs. It's like the world doesn't need any more shit plumbers, right? If you don't genuinely care, this role isn't for you. You can't dial it in. You won't be successful. But
I agree. No, I think it's care and believe like in the solution, right, that you're selling that's going to make an impact for them, right? I think when, these executives, they can read right through you if they don't think you don't believe in what you're communicating, or you're just, trying to put one past them or whatever it is. I mean, like you know how internal processes are at big companies, right? You are the advocate for your customer, right? And fighting to get them a fair deal, right? And sometimes, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, and you're going to give more than you want, and they're going to give more than they want. But like, that's the whole point. If you don't care, you're just like, oh, I'm going to try to maximize and make as much money. Well, that's where that one sale just goes and dies.
Yeah.
Right. When people don't feel like they got a good deal, but they have to have something, so you kind of have them. That's where like those 1 year contracts come, or those 3 year, and they churn, right? Because one, you sold them something that they didn't maybe need or want. You sold it to them at a high price so you can maximize your commission, which, listen, we all need to make money, but there's a way to do it, right? And if you can walk away with the customer feeling happy about, the deal that they got, like one thing that we always do right after our big deals is, I understand people's jobs and roles, responsibilities, like procurement, right? That's a really hard role. Their job is to basically beat up the vendor to get as much savings. What I do is I create a list from, hey, here's where we started. Here are all the things that you like successfully negotiated or won or whatever, and you guys did a great job. Like, and that is like, those type of little things have really, I think, helped me in my kind of selling process. And when I've had like repeat business, and this is what goes back to the networking thing, right? Like, people all be like, hey, call this CIO or call this CFO or call this whoever, right? And talk to them about what it's like to deal with me, right? It's because I do those type of things that, it's not just about me and making money. It's more about bringing a solution, bringing value, getting one of my favorite things to do is get people promoted, right? That means we're doing our job. It's working. The stuff is going like, that's where I think the real win is.
Yeah, and that real trust and that real relationship. I'll give you an example. Last Christmas morning, I got more texts off clients than I did off family, right? Because you become a meaningful part of their life or the career, and especially the ones that you've helped get promoted or you've helped get more established within their career by doing the right thing. That becomes huge.
Yeah. I mean, you know me, right? Like that was at one point my claim to fame. I think I sent like over 500 at least text messages for mostly Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I do it in increments, right? Like, cause I get up early. I don't really sleep that well. So I get up early and, for either the Europe or the East Coast people or whoever, right? I'll block off like 8 a.m. till 10. And I'm just like watching Sports Center or whatever it is. And I'm just blasting. And one thing I'm not doing, and I think this is a key point, is like, I am not just saying, hey, Merry Christmas or hey, Happy Thanksgiving. I always put that personal about their family, about, hey, I hope you have a great golf trip, or I hope you I know you're going to Cancun or whatever it is, right? So it's a manual process. I'm sure there's a better way to do it in today's world, but like just being a little bit old school, like taking the time to do that. And to your point, I would say like it's probably 75-25, right? From customer on holiday to family or friends, because, a lot of these people I spend more time with than my friends or portion of my family.
You've mentioned mentorship a few times, and I know how important mentorship is to you, and I know you've had incredible mentors, but can you explain why you think it's so important and what it's done for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think the key thing you just said is mentors, right? Not one, right? I have tons, and a lot of them are my friends, my good friends, right? And I would never be in the position if I am now without them, right? You're talking about, some of the most successful salespeople in the world that have met with CEOs of Fortune 1 to Fortune 50. And what do you even say to those guys, right? Like, what do those guys even care about, right? That are that important and that big. So I think and I think it's just a constant learning mindset, right? That's why I love hanging out with younger kind of AEs, right? They have all of this energy and they want to do well. They just really haven't had good coaching and they have bad habits. And it's more of like, you got to make 100 calls. Well, you know what? Like 100 shitty calls is 100 shitty calls. And you're not like just to check a box. And you're actually hurting the brand more than helping the brand, right? That's why I think personalization is so key. It's like, no, do 20 great calls or 20 great emails, right? You're going to get 3 or 4 people. They might not say yes, but at least they'll respond, right? And that's kind of the mentality that I like working with people that I'm mentoring and, networking with and introducing them. And because I want them to kind of do it the right way, right? And I don't knock what companies do or how they do it, right? Everyone has to make a living and do their job, but I think there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And I've done both. And that's where I'm passionate. I want people that if they're speaking to executives, I want them to earn the right to do it. Right. And I want to show them the process on how you do it. And you know what happens, Carl? Like some people are like, holy shit, like this isn't for me. Right. Like this is way too much work. And I'm like, I know. Right. And that's a separation of kind of state. Right. But there's other people that just don't even know. They've never been taught. They haven't gone through training. They haven't worked for big companies. They just don't know. Right. And then they get it. And the other thing I always say is like, go speak to Carl, like go speak to this person, go speak to that person. Just take 5% of what I'm saying that you like, right? Take 10% of what he like and make it your own, make it genuine in your own. I think that's also a really critical thing as well.
I couldn't agree more, but a lot of people celebrate the outcome but don't understand the process. Like, I give you an example. Most of my family and friends back in Ireland haven't a fucking clue what I do for a living. But they'll see that I've done okay over here and they'll go, oh yeah, but you could sell sand in the desert. No, I prepare like a beast.
Yeah.
And you said this phrase to me once, walking into a meeting. It was with Star Insurance. We were trying to sell them a phone system when we were at Ring Central. And we were meeting with the C-suite. And we're walking in and you said, how are you doing? You go, I said, yeah, I'm all right. And he goes, look, we've already won this. We did the preparation.
Yeah.
We weren't walking into a blind alley. We had fucking prepared, and we had every outcome planned for.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know the exact quote, but Kobe Bryant like has all these quotes, and I follow all these sports guys. Obviously, as we kicked off kind of the podcast, right? I'm big into motivation and finding like the best coaches and the best players and what sets them apart. And Kobe Bryant said something to the effect of, and I'm just going to paraphrase this, like, that is the win, right? That is you're making it is when you're preparing like that. The win isn't like when you close the deal, right? Like that's the outcome of it. And you're going to get all of those awards or financial, but you've earned the right to do it. You've put in the time. Like, I've been in sales for 20 whatever years. Like I can count maybe on my one hand how many bluebirds I've got. Like whoever gets these things, like good for freaking them, because I've been doing this and I got no shot to get that. So, that's the thing, right? Like deals just aren't sitting on my lap, even at Salesforce and even at Oracle, right? Like we're the biggest and some of the best companies in the world that we've both worked at. Like we're manufacturing deals, right? Like no one's coming and saying, Todd, like we got to have this, right? They're like, no, we don't want any, like you stop selling us, right? So I think like that's a big component.
So we touch on mentorship and learning, and is there a mindset that's got you through, say, from playing basketball through the early days of your career, where it's just going in there and you never walk into the best accounts? You're always like, I give you an example. I moved over from Ireland to the States, and I was told, do you want these 2 accounts which will never buy from us again, or do you want these 2 accounts which we've never done any business with before?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the first accounts you get, right?
Yeah.
So what's the mindset that's dragged you through all of that? And what's kind of the inner monologue?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just like, I mean, it's gonna sound crazy, but it's like, I don't even know if this is the right term, but like the fear of being fired, right? The fear, like, I don't rest on any of the things that I've done in my past. I'm always like on the highway looking forward, right? Like, because every day is a new deal, every day is a new number, right? To your point, you have a new account, whatever that is, and stuff that works in old accounts is not going to work in this account. And people, like, you know, as we know, right, the scoreboard every year goes back to 0, and it feels like almost every month or every quarter lately. But like, that's what I think drives me, right? Is that, like, I never get comfortable. I'm never comfortable. I'm always thinking. There's actually this great quote that this guy, I posted it a couple times on LinkedIn. He's this football trainer, and he said, and again, I'm going to paraphrase, but he said something to the effect of, like, you know, average people think they're always doing like more than they should, and like the top and the best people like are petrified that they're never doing enough, right? Like, and that's just my mindset, right? I just never think. I always think there's more to be done, like what, you know, internally, externally, with the customer, like positioning, value, like all of these different things, right? I always look at it like from that perspective. So just like never being satisfied with anything, and that just consistent mindset of learning and growing and getting better.
Yeah, there's some people you look at in their jobs, and they're brilliant or average or poor, it doesn't matter. The one thing, you like, they don't know how good they are at their job. The one thing I love about what we do is you're reminded every quarter how good you are at your job. It's by your pipeline and your close rate, right? Yeah. So it's nearly like stand-up comedy. If you don't get the laugh immediately, you know it's a shit joke. Like, if you don't close the deal, you know you didn't do it right. Yeah. You know, and or it wasn't a fit, or whatever it happens to be. So like, you do get an instant tell, except those guys, of those 2 guys who seem to get the bluebirds. It wasn't you or me, right? Yeah. But so coming through your career, is there something that stands out that you're most proud of, or something that, like, whether it's personally or professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think, you know, 2 things really. It's my business integrity, right? Like, I always feel like I try to do good deals, and I try to maximize, you know, comp plans and that. But like, fundamentally, like, my deals are good deals. I always feel like they're good deals. So from an integrity perspective, I think that, you know, if I say I'm going to do something, I shake your hand across the table and I tell you, and they call me on Christmas and they say shit's on fire, like, I might not know the answer, and I'm going to tell them I don't know the answer, but I'm going to pick up, right? Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So I think from an integrity perspective, I think that, and the other thing is just my work ethic, right? I think I just outwork people, right? I'm far from the smartest person. I can have intelligent conversations. I kind of know where my stops and starts are, but I think those, you know, from an integrity perspective and from a work ethic, I think that those are 2 of the things that I think kind of separate me, and probably that I'm most proud of just, you know, just sticking to that throughout my career.
Can I pull that thread a little bit? Because I think this goes back to our initial point around playing sport. Yeah. I played rugby, and I played for many years. I was never the best on the team, but I was the hardest working. Yeah. You know, and it was, and my coach always tell me, you're one of the first names in the team sheet, because I know I'm going to get 100% out of you when you go out there.
Yeah. Like, and you're going to show up, right? You're going to show up. You're going to be on time, you know, like, listen, you're not always going to have good days, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to be there and you're going to figure it out. I think, that's the same thing, to bring this back full circle, right? Of what I try to incorporate into my business and the way I run it, right? And also the expectation, right? Like, I set high expectations for my team, right? Because my team is me, right? When they go into those customer meetings, and they're a representation of the company, obviously, but also me. Like, and when we have bad meetings, right, other people on my team have bad, it's on me, because I didn't prepare them, right? One way, and it's fair and unfair, but it's kind of like, the quarterback mentality, right? When the team wins, quarterback gets a lot of the credit. When the team loses, quarterback gets all the credit, right? Or it gets all the, the fault.
Yeah.
So, that's just kind of is what it is.
100%. So look, this brings me to our second last question. And I think you've already touched on it with work ethic, but I'm not going to let you give that as the answer again.
Yeah.
So what do you think separates you from your peers?
Yeah, 2% edge, right? I always tell people, I just want to be 2% better, 1% better than the other person, right? So, if that's working on Saturday, if that's, getting on a plane when I don't want to go somewhere and doing a dinner, or, making the call early in the morning or late at night, or studying, or doing whatever it kind of takes to separate myself just a little bit more, right? Because if I do 1% better every day, like, that starts piling up, right? And it's like, okay, well, what is that, right? Well, it's the 10K reports, it's the listening to podcasts, it's the what's their earnings statement. Like, a lot of people are using like AI and all, and I think that's great. Like, it helps me. I use it all the time. But like, AI doesn't track everything that's going on, what they're saying on LinkedIn. AI doesn't track every podcast that they're doing, right? Where they're saying like really important stuff, right? Like, so those are the things that I think I'm doing. I think goes back to the network, right? Like, and I think it goes back to a lot of my mentors. I think it goes to my customers, right? I've had a lot of customers that have made me better. I've had to operate at a high level because they are serious freaking people, and that has raised my game, tremendously, right? When you're in a room with excellent people, you either go up or you go away, right? Like,
Yeah.
it just is what happens all the time. So I think those are some of the things that have really helped me in general.
Well, look, Todd, thank you for joining us today. It's been a true pleasure. You're somebody I know for a long time. You're somebody who I have huge amounts of respect for. As I said, my first day in America, sat down at a desk, you were the first guy who spoke to me. So thank you for joining me on the podcast. Thank you for being one of my mentors and explaining why mentorship is so important. Thank you for being a fucking great friend too, man. Like, just thank you. I appreciate you being on this. And the last thing we do here on the Irish Goodbye podcast is, as we get up from the bar and we leave and we go on to the next one to get a few shorts, there's a napkin on the bar. What's the bit of advice you'd write on the back of that napkin for the next person coming in?
First one in, last one out, on all facets of your life, buddy. That would be it.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks again. Appreciate you greatly, and I wish you continued success.
All right, man. Thank you. Had a great time, and look forward to conversations in the future. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Be good.
All right. Later, bud.